Hey guys, how's it going? This video is a review and my thoughts on the Batman. If you're not familiar with the format, I'm going to kind of lay out my thoughts as I experienced them watching the movie, and things will kind of increase in clarity as we get towards the end. I'll be going into great detail. I'll probably notice a lot of things that you didn't, or maybe not. But I hope you enjoy it. If you haven't seen the movie yet, there will be spoilers, so you should probably come back after you've seen it. And yeah, without further ado, here we go. I'll start off by saying that I'm a huge Batman fan. I grew up watching all the movies. I've seen the animated movies, all of them. I've read a ton of the comics. I'm a huge Batman fan. So if you know me well enough, you'd know it's kind of crazy that I haven't seen this movie yet, but I've just been really busy with work, and every chance I've gotten to see a movie, I've taken my son to see something he wanted to see. So it's kind of finally my turn to be entertained. It might actually be better this way because these are my true initial thoughts. You know, I haven't seen it in the theaters. I got to pause and write this stuff down as I went through it. So this will be a bit more authentic and detailed than I could have ever done in a movie theater. The opening scene, I like the music. It's got a weird tone to it, not really typical for Batman. The credits are usually something of a spectacle for Batman movies, and this one just kind of cut straight to the chase. As much time as they take in this movie, I'm kind of glad that they didn't waste it with that sort of stuff. We start off with somebody looking through some binoculars that look like something that exists in the real world. No fantastic tech here, and I kind of like that. At first, I was wondering if it was Batman watching over Alfred or something, but it's the mayor being watched by the Riddler. And I like how Batman's walking among the crowd. Normally he's like looking down from the rooftops and stuff, and you can't really see too much from up there. I mean, even with binoculars, you'd be kind of limited. I like that he's among the people, and I'm sure COVID-19 probably helped because he can wear a mask and not really raise any eyebrows or anything. He acknowledges that he has to pick his battles. He can't be everywhere all at once. I like that. A humble Batman. The bat signal, it looks like something somebody made, not something that was manufactured, and I also like that. And it's probably a little more intimidating to the bad guys, too. In fact, patience seems to be something that the director had a lot of making this movie. The long, slow footsteps as Batman approaches, I really, really like that. And I just want to comment on the sound design. The use of bass at this point in the movie, and for the rest of it now that I've seen the whole thing, is fantastic. If you have an opportunity to watch this on a nice sound system, it might actually change your perception of the movie. I can't imagine what it would have been like just watching on a regular TV or something. It had impact in all the right places. I felt the punches, and I just loved it. So high praise for that, and we'll get to that later. The subway somehow looks worse than they do in real life. I didn't know that was the thing, but apparently they can get worse. And I actually like that. It really gives you the feeling that Gotham's the kind of place that needs Batman. And Batman's first show of force is him versus 10 guys. And he doesn't use any gadgets until somebody pulls a weapon, and then he needs to use a force multiplier. It seemed kind of implausible to me that only one of the criminals was carrying a weapon, but that was the case here, and I don't really care because it was an awesome scene. It's just got some body armor and good old-fashioned hand-to-hand combat. Batman has a 5 o'clock shadow going on, which I kind of like. You know, normally he's clean-shaven, but in this movie he didn't bother, and I like that because, you know, him being so preoccupied with his role as the Batman, I don't think he would even bother shaving any more often than he had to. So I really like that. It's again more realistic. We get our first scene with Jim Gordon. I was really excited about that. I really like Jeffrey Wright, so I was really looking forward to his performance. And just in the first few moments of them two, you get the feeling that he kind of hates that he needs the Batman, but he knows that it's a means to an end. And if that's what it takes to clean up Gotham, then he's willing to do it. And I think that's authentic to the character of Jim Gordon. Um, there's an interaction with the Batman trying to go into the mayor's crime scene, and a cop tries to stop him. And I really like the way that scene went down. At the end of that, I just thought, like, man, Robert Pattinson is perfect casting for this. The way he moves past him and takes really slow steps into the room. We know now, after seeing the movie, that it probably has a lot to do with the contact lenses, but nonetheless, I really like the tone of that. Um, when I heard that he was cast as Batman originally, I was kind of skeptical. I'd only seen him really in Twilight, wasn't too impressed by that. So I went out of my way to catch up on his like more current catalog, and I just want to say, films like High Life, Good Time, Tenet, The Lighthouse, those are all excellent performances. And now I kind of consider him as probably one of the best actors in his age range that's still, performing in Hollywood now. I like the Commissioner. I was thinking, I guess Joe Pesci was unavailable because I feel like the guy was trying to just be Joe Pesci. We get another long, cold stare from the Batman as he looks into the eyes of the mayor's son, who's now orphaned. I really like the editing, and I think that other editors and directors, I hope they watch this and pay attention, because movies can be a lot more impactful if they take the time for you to feel for the characters. When everything's cutting every 2 seconds like a Michael Bay film, it's really hard to relate or to feel anything. We get an underutilized Nirvana song. I think that was a nice touch that suited the scene and the tone of the movie perfectly. He's got a worn helmet, a modest motorcycle. He doesn't have the fastest bike in the world like some other Batman we've seen. This guy isn't really trying to live like a billionaire. He's just doing what he's got to do. He's understated and unassuming, and I like that, especially for early Batman. And the same can be said for what appears to be functioning as the Batcave. It looks just as crappy as the rest of Gotham. Everything that's in there needs to be in there. And we get the little tease with the Batmobile underneath the cover. And you see parts laying around and stuff, so it's evident that he's working on that stuff himself, and I really like that. He goes to look at his diary or journal, whatever you want to call it. And anytime text comes up in movies or shows that I'm covering, I always pause and analyze every line, see if there's any Easter eggs or anything notable I can dig up. And there's nothing really here, but I do like the fact that everything we've been hearing him say is what he's writing down. So it wasn't really just exposition. It was really just, or narration even. It was his inner monologue just being shared with us, what was going on in his head. And I like that. We are informed that this is year 2 of his project, so this is definitely new Batman. He's just getting in the groove of things. I also think it's notable that we're like 20 minutes into a movie and they haven't tried to sell us anything yet. That's kind of uncommon these days. The mayor's a 4-time incumbent, so it's reasonable that people blame him for the way things have kind of declined in Gotham. And it's also 20 years after the death of Mr. and Mrs. Wayne. So it took Bruce 18 years to stew on this stuff and decide he's going to do something about it. He wants to bring Gotham back from the shadows by becoming the shadows, and I like that. I'm curious if Batman was also keeping tabs on the mayor. If he was a primary source of the decline, you'd think that Batman would have done something about it by now. Another interesting detail, Bruce turns the music down. So it wasn't just entertaining us, he was listening to it too. And that's kind of insightful. It's probably why he's so depressed listening to stuff like that. But it's a good song. And a nice touch, nice attention to detail. We get introduced to Alfred, and my initial impression was positive. I like the dynamic between him and Bruce. He doesn't necessarily look or come across like a typical Alfred, but their dynamic is very typical and authentic. So I don't really care about appearances or anything like that. And I'm thinking 20 years between the father who was running for mayor and the Vince of today. They're likely connected. We now know after seeing the movie that they were. People basically made a martyr out of him when he died. Although, there's room to argue that he was a good guy, but he definitely had a cleaner reputation than maybe he deserved after what happened to him or what he had done. We see he lies still. I was thinking that's a double entendre, illustrating that the speech after the death of the possibly corrupt mayor could illustrate how he's already becoming a martyr himself, and the Riddler wants to make light of the fact that just because you die doesn't make you a good person. I found the interior design of Wayne Manor to be really interesting. There's so much embellishing on everything, like everything possible. It suggests the father wasn't really a humble guy like Bruce is, and nothing normal was good enough for him, so everything had some kind of hand carving or something like that. And I think that's really insightful on what things were like for the Bruce or the Wayne family. I like that Alfred immediately goes to work to help with the cipher. He's a member of the team. He's not a servant. And notable observation there, he wasn't given the letter D, but the only word spelled out on the cipher in the center when they flash across it for a moment was the word doom. And I found that pretty interesting. Kind of made me think of like Justice League Doom and some other things, other stories out there. The maid addresses Alfred and not Bruce. And I thought that was kind of interesting. Like, she knows who's concerned about what's going on around the manor. They go and see the mayor's car collection. That's more evidence that he was corrupt. I kind of wish people would draw those kind of connections in real life, but I digress. It appears we found the weapon used to remove the mayor's thumb. I did not expect it to mean thumb drive, though. That was very clever. I guess that's why I'm not the world's greatest detective. The thumb drive was evidence of the corruption we've suspected, so at least we were right about that. Batman makes a nice entrance into the club, and if you're careful, you'll notice a missed punch. And the first person to comment and tell me the timestamp of that, I'll give you a shout out in the next video. I don't know if I would have left that in there myself. Surely they noticed it as detail-oriented as they were making this film. But maybe it's just there to show that he's still developing, he's still human, you know, he's got growth to yet to come. So I'll give it a pass. Deflecting the bullet with the baseball bat was great. I really liked that. But he's going to need a bigger bat to deflect that shotgun. So time for a force multiplier again. Wow, Colin Farrell. I just don't have the words for that. He must have spent a long, long time in makeup. I heard he was unrecognizable, but this is a little ridiculous. I know I mentioned Joe Pesci earlier, and I can't help but think that he probably could have played this role and they wouldn't have had to put as much makeup on him. The first look that you get from Penguin made me think about that face that he makes in the first scene of Home Alone when he shows up. Catwoman has a more complex backstory than typical. And Batman watching outside reminds me of that movie Disturbia when he's looking through the binoculars and stuff. They used CGI when Catwoman was dropping off of the ladder. I just feel like that could have been done by a stunt person and been a lot more believable. It kind of pulled me out of things for a moment when I saw that. And I guess her mirrors didn't work on her motorcycle because she had somebody following her and lane splitting and stuff behind her like 20 yards and she didn't notice them. That's kind of weird. Typically people are a little paranoid when they're breaking the law, but she wasn't paying any attention. And on the topic of CGI, they also used it for fight choreography instead of using a stunt double that actually had martial arts skills. I think that was another unnecessary shortcut. If they did it for Batman 2, I didn't notice it like hardly at all in the movie, so I wasn't too impressed by that. Speaking of noticing things, I guess the cop didn't notice that the safe was open when he went in to investigate the mayor's office after he heard all the ruckus from them fighting. And Batman commented on how good she was at cracking a safe, but she's clearly not a good thief if she's getting notices, final due notice for a bill that's like $400. She gets home, finds the door open, fridge open, and I'm guessing they also opened the 20 cans of cat food that's just laying around. They took her phone, which is probably the smartest thing she's done so far, provided she's heard of Find My iPhone. We get the introduction of the Riddler. He's interesting. His costume's way closer to Bane in the Dark Knight trilogy than really the traditional Riddler. But he does seem truer to his character than Bane ever did, so I'll give him that. Side note, I'm looking for a great performance from Paul Dano. There Will Be Blood's one of my all-time favorite movies. I really like him, so I had high expectations for him. And after some of the things I'd seen, his first couple traps or whatnot, I was just waiting on a mannequin on a bicycle to come rolling up, because obviously they were inspired by Saw with some of this stuff. Catwoman has milk in a glass jar. That was kind of a nice callback to the previous Catwoman. But she just leaves the fridge open, and that kills me. Like, I couldn't stand just watching somebody hang out and leave their fridge door open. And Batman says, "You're not safe here." And I'm like, yeah, from E. coli. I know this is petty. I have a thing for grammar. And she said, "I seen," rather than "I've seen" or "I saw." I mean, nobody's perfect, but with so much attention to detail, I feel like that was probably intentional for no good reason other than make her seem uneducated, and I didn't really like that. I like that her costume is obviously hand-stitched, another nice throwback to traditional Catwomen. And then we head to the morgue, where they're also keeping evidence, and that was weird. I guess it saved some time, but again, it kind of threw me off. I was wondering who was going to be Carmine Falcone. I hadn't looked that up. And when I saw it was John Turturro, I got really excited about that. I've been watching his performance in Severance, a show that I cover on this channel, and he's doing fantastic on that. So I was pretty optimistic about his role in this, and I really enjoyed it. After the scene with the DA and the Riddler, we get a shot of a billboard informing us that the fruit head guy that we saw earlier in the film was actually wearing a costume of the drug, the drops. And I thought that was interesting. Like, people don't normally dress up as illegal substances for Halloween, but I thought it was a nice touch. Again, still haven't been any advertising yet. I could read that it was a Lincoln Aviator, but that's really all I could notice the whole movie. So, well done, guys. The only real billboards or anything we see are for political candidates. And in one case, there's one building that has a billboard for each candidate on the same roof. And one of them was placed higher than the other. And I'm sure that was done on purpose. They had a bigger budget. So I thought that was interesting. We get a cameo from one of my favorite classic cars, the 63 Corvette split rear window. That made me pretty happy to see. Classy choice, Mr. Wayne. We also get a little more illusion that Thomas Wayne was corrupt from Carmine Falcone. He suggested that he helped him recover from a gunshot wound, and it wasn't just out of the kindness of his heart. It was, or his commitment to the Hippocratic Oath. We know later that he did a little bit more for him than that. I like the police station scene. That is a great moment to illustrate and develop the relationship between Jim and Batman. I like how Batman punched him so that he could kind of cover his butt, and then he got out of there. Also like the wingsuit sequence. It's clear that he's rarely used that, if he's ever used it. And it's another good way to illustrate that he's still kind of developing. He's not full-on Batman yet. Catwoman showed up with a chain whip. I love that. I got really excited when I saw that. The only thing that I kind of had an issue with was she showed up to steal money and bags that are about as big as she is on a motorcycle. If those actually were full of money, she would not be able to carry those and would have a very hard time riding a bike with it, especially running away. Jim, on the other hand, brought a car to carry those big-ass balls he's carrying around. I can't believe he drove in the middle of that firefight with no backup. I mean, that guy's committed. And the next part I'm going to mention, you guys are probably expecting it. A viewer had told me I was going to love this part. He was right. You know who you are. When the Batmobile showed up, my pants got tighter than a buffalo in a tutu. Like, man alive, that was awesome. This, my beloved viewers, is how you introduce a Batmobile. The sound, the lighting, the reaction from everybody, awesome. Really, really like that. The closest thing to that I've experienced was the first time I stood next to an F-16 that was doing an engine test while it was strapped down. And I'm not even sure I was like as excited then as I was seeing this Batmobile scene. Penguin might have been a Maserati, but he's crazy to think that he could have stood half a chance of getting away. Though I'll give him, he did give it a solid effort. After that interrogation with Jim and Batman and the Penguin, I was like, yeah, I see why you chose Colin Farrell, because he killed that. He really did. The move on Bruce was pretty upsetting. I was pissed when I thought that Alfred had gotten killed. I guess you could have wrote the story in such a way that it wouldn't have been the end of the world, but all they really have is each other, so it's kind of messed up to take either one out of the equation. Like, Batman's already lost enough. I really like that Catwoman was the daughter of Falcone. That was a nice touch. It made things pretty interesting. I don't know why she keeps saying she can take care of herself when we've all seen her apartment, but I'll stop picking on her for now. I like the way they gave us more ways to consider why Thomas and Martha got murdered. They didn't flat out tell us. We still get to wonder, but now we have a few different reasons to ponder and think about, and I really like that. And I'm curious what you guys think. Why do you think they got killed? Was it Falcone or Maroni? I don't know if I'd say that Andy Serkis is a perfect Alfred, but that scene in the hospital is definitely the best acting performance I've seen by anybody playing Alfred. So hats off to him for that one. Selena makes a nice Nine Lives comment, tries to kill a guy, which is par for the course for her character. And then we get that sequence of Batman running down the side of the building. That went over a lot better than the wingsuit thing did, so I'm guessing he might have practiced that a little bit. Selena probably could have saved us an hour if she watched any movie ever. If you give a speech before you try to kill somebody, you'll never successfully kill them. And speaking of the guy, when the elevator opened and there wasn't anybody in there, if he had seen any movie ever, he'd know to look up immediately, and he probably wouldn't have a broken jaw right now. Batman fighting in the long dark hallway, it made me think about Daredevil, and I was just kind of wishing that we could get a long one shot like we tend to get from Daredevil. I love those kind of scenes. Unfortunately, we didn't in this. The club scene is probably the closest thing to that. And I know a certain level of suspension of disbelief is necessary when you're watching a Batman movie. But if a bullet hits you, even if it bounces off your armor, you're going to feel like you got punched by a Volvo. So when somebody's unloading on you with an automatic weapon, I don't know why you just casually walk toward them like you did. That was a little over the top. I mean, it looked cool, but if they're trying to be realistic, that wasn't really hitting it for me. I noticed Catwoman's nails earlier in the film and decided it's reasonable for a character and everything. It's not really ideal for somebody who works with their hands, cracking safes and stuff, but when she used them to claw Falcone, I really liked that. Kind of made it all worth it for me. And then when you tried to choke her out with the pool stick, I'm like, I'm surprised y'all didn't go with the trope of him trying to strangle her with a pool stick on the pool table and her getting a cue ball and hitting him in the temple with it. I like when Batman walked out to Jim and half the police department was there waiting to get Falcone. That was a nice scene. You just kind of got the feeling that everybody was standing beside Jim, and he'll almost certainly be commissioner in the sequel if they make one. I don't really get why the Riddler killed Falcone. It seemed kind of counterproductive to his goals. That was kind of a chance to, for Gotham to turn around. It looked possible for a moment. I mean, yeah, he deserved to die, and he probably would have gotten off easy with his connections, but there was a chance, I guess we'll talk about it in a moment, but in hindsight, it makes a little bit more sense. Paul Dano looks as sane as ever when he's got his head pressed into the counter. I like that. That's the side of Dano I wanted to see. And I just looked over the 2 driver's licenses, and there's not too much there. 2 names, 2 addresses, 2 different birthdays, no weight, and height 6 foot. I checked. That's how tall he is. It says 6 foot and half an inch, so I guess he's counting halves. The performance in Arkham was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. He seemed creepy and crazy. It wasn't quite Dark Knight Joker level, but I really liked it. Well done. I also liked how he acknowledged that Batman wasn't really a fake persona, but it's more the real Bruce. And I like that Batman's emblem on his chest was a batarang. That was a nice touch. Probably would have been a better tool to pull up the carpet than using a murder weapon. That was evidence, but I guess they already got their guy, so it's not that big of a deal. One of the comments on Riddler's video makes a slick reference to Dexter, reminding him not to forget the cling wrap. And by the way, I read all the comments in the film, and that was the first one I found notable. I'm also ashamed that I don't have as many subscribers as the Riddler yet, so if you don't mind, go ahead and click that button. I'd really appreciate it. Once the Riddler's big finale was revealed, I'm regretting not noting something that I noticed earlier. In the scene where the DA, where I talked about the billboards and stuff, in that same scene, you see like a wall with a ton of water, and I know the whole city was like the sets were made for the movie or whatever, so it was probably there for a reason, but I just couldn't really see something on that scale happening. So I didn't mention it, and here we are. It's just not really, it's kind of outside the modus operandi of the Riddler at that point in the movie, at least. I guess he found the city to be unredeemable and is just doing kind of a Sodom and Gomorrah type deal. The scene at Gotham Square was pretty good. I don't think it really hits the high points of some of the other Batman movie climaxes, but it's still better than a lot of other stuff I've seen lately. Batman finally starts reacting to bullet fire, especially that shotgun at close range. And that said, whoever brought that would have been very effective from a distance, especially the slow reload. I mean, it's obvious the shooter wasn't very experienced with weapons, so I give him a pass. I was expecting another trope of somebody stepping on Batman's fingers as he hung to the ledge, but fortunately they didn't go that route. Selina and him have a nice moment until they didn't. Batman ends up with what seems to be an adrenaline EpiPen, but the green tint kind of makes me wonder if maybe it was the drop stuff. Like, we haven't really seen a lot of what that drug does, and maybe in a large dose it can give you a boost like that. I was pretty confident that the scarred guy at the funeral would show back up again, but I was still kind of surprised when they pulled the mask off and he was one of the Riddler's followers. It makes sense, but I just didn't see it coming. Batman's attempt at self-sacrifice, he could have avoided that. He could have just wrapped the cable around his leg, pulled it tight, and then cut below where he was holding. I mean, I get it was dramatic and everything, but it wasn't really necessary. But it was a means for him to get down and help that orphan kid. I'm not surprised at all. He's tried to be there for the orphans. I mean, 2 orphans are the reason that everything in this movie happened, so probably time to start paying attention to those guys. Batman's monologue from the roof, I like that. It was nicely written and performed. And I really like the scene in Arkham teasing Barry Keoghan's Joker. I really like him in a bunch of movies and shows, particularly Killing of a Sacred Deer. If you haven't seen that, great performance there. I've also seen the deleted scene with him and Batman talking together. I enjoyed that. I'd like to see more of that character if we get a sequel. Catwoman says she's heading upstate, possibly to Bloodhaven. If you aren't familiar with the comics, Bloodhaven is actually east of Gotham. It's between Gotham and Atlantic City, and it's where Nightwing calls home. So I feel like that's a little hint that maybe we'll see Nightwing in a future movie if they keep doing them. So yeah, lastly, Batman and Catwoman say their goodbyes. She realizes that his love's for the city, and that's where his commitment is. So they go their separate ways, surely to meet again if they have a sequel, though, I'm sure. And they roll credits. There's no post-credit scene in this one, but there is a clue at the very end for a website. Excuse me. I'll put a link in the description if you guys want to know where it's at. But it seems like they pulled the content down, but I'm sure everything's on YouTube at this point. And my final thoughts. I'm probably going to be covering a lot of movies. I kind of want to have some way of indicating what I think's better than what, so I came up with a kind of a Doug DeMuro type rating scale. So we'll go through it and see what we score this one. So direction and cinematography, I really liked it. I think it was way better than average. I gave it a 7 out of 10. Music and sound design, I think it was excellent. I give it an 8 out of 10. Writing, I think it was, again, better than average, but there are better written movies and shows out there. I mean, that's just all there is to say about it. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. Certainly nothing wrong with it, but I'm not going to give it exceptionally high marks because I know that I'll come across better things. Casting, 9 out of 10. I think it was fantastic casting. Frankly, it's kind of hard for me to imagine much better, but I'll reserve 10 for something that blows me away. And editing, this is extremely good editing. Very, very impressed with that. So I gave it a 9 out of 10. So that gives it a total score of 39.5 out of 50. I think that sounds about right to me. Again, I'm a big Batman fan, so I'm particularly critical on this kind of stuff. And yeah, those are my thoughts. I enjoyed the film, and I hope you guys did too, and I hope you enjoyed my video. So let me know what you thought in the comments, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.